right, welcome to Legacies, everyone. Don't forget, Legacies is powered by AVEO, leaders in sustainable vape hardware. I'm joined this week by Chris Violas, CEO, founder of Blaze. Chris, welcome to Legacies, man.
Awesome. What's up, Tom? Thanks for having me. Big fan of what you're doing up there. I know a lot of the Canadian community follow Izzy, so excited to be here and chat about what's going on in cannabis and tech and all the fun
Yeah,
stuff.
I just always get jealous when I have guests that join me from Cali because you've always got sunshine and warmth.
Yeah, it's about 80 degrees today. It's pretty beautiful out here. I'd have to convert that to Celsius, but 80 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's nice.
I joke all the time. So indoors, I have to set the thermometer to Fahrenheit. Outdoors, talk to me in Celsius. But
Yes,
I grew up in that weird period of conversion from metric and imperial, right? So screwed me up. But I do run around barefoot even in the winter. So I've got my feet in the sand with you in Cali.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Listen, man, you've had quite the ride in tech and cannabis. Going back, 2010? Is that right? Cannabest?
Yeah, it started exactly. So not many people know that story. But yeah, I was a former operator, ambitious, saw the cannabis green rush, if you will, back in California. And so my father has been in the industry for quite some time. He's been an attorney, cannabis attorney, if you will, asset protection attorney, since the early or late 2000s, like 2008, 9. And so I saw him really getting into the space, and I just thought, this looks insane. I want to get my entrepreneurship chops rolling. I really want to get something moving. And so we started a dispensary my junior year of college, which is kind of
Wild. So dad was into cannabis in a way, but more so representing. And that was 2010. That was what do they call that? Bill 215?
Oh,
Is that
Prop
what was
215. Yeah.
Prop
So California
215,
Prop
right?
215 was the medical proposition, right, that allowed for medical sales in California.
Yeah. So what was Cannabest? Because again, it's one of those stories that you don't really hear much about it, right? I think you're an operator, you built it, you exit it, and then I want to understand that transition to go, yeah, that was great. I'm going to start with Blaze now.
For sure. Yeah. So I think back then, right, it was, you had to get a medical recommendation from a licensed physician or a doctor. It was pretty straightforward to get them. And then once you got them, I mean, it was the Wild West, if you will, of cannabis. So you had some folks that were, producing their own cannabis, vertically integrated in some natures. That was Cannabest story. We had about 5,000 square feet of indoor that we cultivated as well. But really it was challenging to get products back then. There weren't brands, this idea of these consistent, beautiful edibles like wow that we have today just didn't exist. Right. And so I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot through it. We ran a delivery service at Cannabest. So we had a very strong digital presence. I have my degree is business information systems. And so, I knew technology. I know how to put that into a company and operationalize it. And so we did that. And it was very challenging to send drivers out. We were doing it. We didn't have a huge tax burden that a lot of the operators today under Proposition 64 in California have, and many operators, throughout North America have. But yeah, it was fun. I really got to understand the plant, got to understand how to interact with the patients, right? Understand how to, run the operation to get the most out of a delivery. Deliveries are not very profitable. They're hard to run. And so really understanding the logistics nature was fun, and bringing kind of my analytical focus to it. I saw it could be done, and I saw there was a way from a framework perspective that could be applied and scaled. And ultimately, when we sold the dispenser, I just was like, we have to solve the technology problem. This is a big opportunity here, and let's go do it.
Yeah. What, so in those days, 2010, I mean, you talk about early operator. I'm just wondering, like, first of all, was it dangerous doing deliveries? Like, I would think it would have to be.
I have got some stories.
It must have been.
Yeah, let's just say I've been robbed. I've had employees take off in products, cash. I will not describe some other ones, but yeah, I mean, you really are in that world, right? You're intersecting with the illicit market at that point, at that stage, how early it was. And frankly, you're talking about like, I'm not saying cartels, but a lot of large organizations that were running the majority of the supply in California, which was obviously getting through to the East Coast of the US as well. So, it was an interesting time. Again, I really enjoyed it. I was a very small fish in the pond, if you will. and we did everything to the T. And I was happy we had an exit, and that really gave me the funds to invest into Blaze and to get that thing off the ground and to get it started. So super
Yeah,
grateful
yeah.
for it. But yeah, I've got some legacy stories for you for sure.
I bet. Well, it's funny because I think about, in the early days in Canada, you could grow your own, right? And it was called an MMAR. So you get that license from the government or Health Canada. And there was supposed to be inspectors that would go out because you could have a what would they call a DG or designated grow for someone else that needed their medicine.
Sure.
And some of these facilities were massive, like massive. And there was a lot of product moving to the black market. And there was supposed to be an inspector, but no one wanted the job, right? Because you could imagine organized crime. It would just take, oh, so they're the inspector. Okay, great. Tell us where all the grows are.
Yeah.
But in those days, I mean, I just think through all the SKUs that are available, both Canada and stateside, in those days, it wasn't licensed facilities necessarily. You weren't dealing, like you mentioned, Wild, great brand, great group.
Yeah. Amazing.
But I mean, what was that like trying to source? And then on the operations side of it, trying to run your business, I just, it's all cash. Is there POS involved at that time? And if so, is it a cobble together tech from other industry? What did that look like?
Yeah, let's talk about it. So, I mean, sourcing product, let's just start there, was I was very fortunate. Again, my father at that point, going into 2011, probably represented, it's rough to describe it, probably 20% of the operators in California.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit more than that. And so, I had connections to some of the best hydro cultivators in Long Beach, right? Like the really good stuff. I had access to Monterey County, so I had access to some greenhouse and outdoor production facilities. So just through our network, through my father's network, really, we were able to get source. And then ultimately, my father and I opened up about a 5,000 square foot grow. And my Paul, my father, he's a green thumb, man. That guy can grow. I'm not the green thumb in the family. I'm the business guy in the family and the tech guy. I can do that.
Yeah.
So, we were the thing that made us different, at least Cannabest, was exactly the best part. I mean, we were bringing up hydro, beautiful product into the Central Coast of California that had traditionally seen outdoor kind of swaggy flower. It was okay. It was good. It's California sunshine. It's going to grow some good stuff. But just the density, the product, everything that we were bringing from the OGs up was, I mean, we got a name for ourselves really quickly. And so we found out, we were in a college town. I was very sure that was going to be our
captive market.
It was going to be our base, our customer base. And sure enough, that was completely the opposite. They were a pain in the ass to work with. Didn't have a ton of cash. And we found that, the Central Coast of California is where a lot of people retire. And so all of our clientele were actually retired folks, winemakers, things of that nature. And it's really fun to interact with those folks because they truly needed the medicine. They truly benefited from it. And they were just good customers. And so that kind of leads me to what was the customer journey, right, for them? How did the tech work and how did they find us? Look, Weed Maps was in back in the day, right? We spent good money on Weed Maps and that was our white pages or yellow pages, if you will, our way to kind of get out there. Again, I built a custom website for Cannabest that did integrate with a point of sale. We went through 2 different point of sales that were cannabis specific back in the day. Both are no longer here, which is interesting. And so that was, again, the inspiration for Blaze. And specifically, what I found was the POS, it could transact like a normal in-store transaction. It wasn't crazy, but it would ring up something. The delivery component was not there. The compliance components weren't built in, right? And then the ability to interface with E-Comm wasn't there. So we built a custom WordPress site, WooCommerce, and had the whole thing all connected. And it was really interesting. And then tying that into the phone systems, right? Because a lot of it was dispatch focused, the dispatch system. So we did implement quite a bit of technology at our shop, even though a lot of people weren't doing that. I truly believe that was how we scaled. And it worked out for us, but that was those learnings and understanding that these pieces didn't talk to that. And oh my God, I needed to have an extra body there just to help transcribe and move data around so that shifts could be set up and the drivers could be dispatched and loaded. Like it just, it really gave me some respect for how these operations come together, and really the SMB category, just regardless of cannabis and regardless of verticals, like it's hard to run retail, just plain and simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, you've been riding shotgun with these operators for the past, 11, 12 years now. Yeah. Right. And it's still a challenge. I had a recent indie operator on, and that's primarily his business is delivery. And, understanding the logistics, he's like, I didn't realize I was going to be a logistics company. Like,
It comes down
at
to
the
it.
end of the day. So you're cobbling solutions together. You're I'm assuming coding some of your own to be able to make this work. But were there any, because you talk compliance, right? So, that's my background is understanding compliance more on the operations side. But geez, like, you're dealing with Prop 215. There was certain requirements at dispensary level,
Sure.
but, so patient records and stuff like these POS systems weren't designed for that, and keeping patient records and scanning cards and
Bingo.
yeah.
Yep.
So was that like a light bulb moment when you exit Cannabest? You go, okay, listen, we've got to, who's the player too at
Yeah.
the time? Like, was there any?
I would just rewind back to like that 2011 mark. I mean, I graduated college, end of, I guess 2013 is when I graduated.
Okay.
And so, um, during that time, I had a senior thesis. Cal Poly is where I went to school. Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. It's a technical institute. And so, part of my senior thesis was what was actually Blaze. I mean, it was this like
Okay.
information systems, built for delivery, built for POS compliance, the whole, E-Comm, the whole 9 yards. And so really like I was doing my senior thesis. I had to do that for school, which was on the technology portion, but I was running operations. And so like by the time I exited school in 13 and we sold the dispensary in 14, like I had a full plan, business plan,
A
full
business plan
specs.
ready to go.
Like
Yeah.
we were ready to rock at that point. And so then it was just finding talent to start to build the organization and really start to attack this thing. So just to
Wow.
kind of rewind a little bit, I wanted to.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. So who was really first on scene when it came to that? They, and I want you to break that down about first mover advantage, first mover market
Sure.
advantage, because you've had great success. You've got presence in Canada as well. You've got new tech, new innovations, and we're going to get to that as well because, as a tech company, the whole adage "innovate or die." I don't know where that ever came from, but it's true. I mean, I felt it, right? But in those days, who was kind of doing it right-ish? And I say
Yeah.
ish because there really probably wasn't.
Yeah, look, I've got some massive respect for some companies in this space that I've watched and I know how hard it is, right? And so some folks that I really looked at early in the day was, MJ Freeway, right? If you remember those guys, right? I'm
Yeah,
way back.
I worked for them in a way. Yeah.
Sure. So like they were one of the big dogs, obviously with the Colorado launch that they really went on the map with that. And then Green Bits, out of the
Yeah.
Northwest. Really interesting. And so those were the two that I really looked towards. And then Meadow came on the scene and obviously was properly backed by Y Combinators. That was interesting to see like real, like,
Yeah.
technology interest outside of, outside of just vertical focused investors. So those were kind of the early ones that I really was inspired by. Flow Hub, Kyle, we're competitors, but really, really good guy and fun to compete with. And so these are folks that I've looked at and they've been through the journey. They've been in the ringer. It's not been easy and things change. And that's the other thing, the constant changes.
So how do you bring it to market then? Because, it's not a saturated market yet. Still, state to state legalize, we'll call it legalization just as a general umbrella for now. But that's slowly rolling out. How do you bring a new product like this to market and how do you ensure there's growth to be able to support, you need to grow as well, right?
So, I just would, from a timeline perspective, want to continue to kind of piece this together. We exited Cannabest in 2014. I then went on the next 6 years in the technology space. So I worked at a ad tech agency. We ran Samson.com for North America, a huge dev team, 50 plus $80 million contract a year, like big stuff. And then I went over to Amazon Web Services for about just under 4 years. And I started coding Blaze, where we started to develop Blaze basically about a year into my journey at AWS. It was like, I was like, we're going to do this. Like, I'm inspired. Like, let's crush it. I still need a day job for sure. But if you fast forward, then about 2018, we started our first customer on board. And who was that? Well, it was one of my father's clients. I was lucky that we, knew a bunch of operators and they were looking for technology. And at that point, Prop 64 was moving, like recreational cannabis was moving in California. It was happening. And so it was a perfect time. Hey, regulations are coming. My father also wrote the regulations for the city of Long Beach. A lot of people knew us, and we obviously we wrote them, so we know what the requirements were, and we backed into them. So it was just a perfect combination of having the right network, understanding how what problems were happening at that time, and then opportunity. It's all about timing. And I would say if Prop 64 didn't come, there wasn't a huge drive to compliance, like who knows what would have happened, but we happened to
Right.
catch the wave just on time. And really, I left Amazon full time to work on full time on Blaze in April of 2019. So
Wow.
it's really been about 5, almost 6 years here where we've been just, I've been
Jeez.
dedicated 100% of my, time to
So
this.
was that tough? Because as an entrepreneur, I mean, we battle these things in our head all the time, right? You're sitting on a good idea, and I think if I look and respect back to the 30s and 40s, Napoleon Hill and these guys, they're like, just move. You've got to move on your idea. If you don't take one step, you won't do it. So you're sitting on this thesis, you've graduated with, probably got high marks in, but like you said, you need a full time job. So was it this? It just burning constantly, or did it really take Prop 64? Is it 64? Is that right? Yeah,
Yeah, the
it's
new the
yeah,
what the current recreational program
yeah,
is here. Yeah.
right. So did it take that to be like, okay, I really need to look at this now, or
No, I
what
think,
was it?
we knew as soon as we sold the dispensary, my father and I were like, we're rolling this into the software. Because again, we had the plan, we knew it. We were like, we want to go big and we want to scale this thing. And that's kind of like I was inspired by it. A lot of what was going on in Silicon Valley. And you
Mm.
look at that time, Instagram, like what was this thing you could post a photo to? How were they blowing up? Like what was going on? And I was fascinated with the B2B SaaS space because again, that's kind of what I went to school with. That's what I studied. And yeah, I would just say like I just deep desire to, really run a company. I grew up, I was surrounded by really great families throughout my young, young life. And a lot of them, their families own businesses. And I just like that
Mm.
was something that I aspired to. And so it was a little bit of, we've got the funds, let's go attack it. The market is getting bigger. California was what, the third or fourth to recreationalize?
Hmm.
I hope I got that right.
Yeah.
But things were really starting to move. Canada was starting to really take off, and it was like, okay, this is it. Let's hit it. And so that's when we finally got our seed round of funding in April of 2019, and it was like, let's start building a team. And we started with 5 people, and today we're
Nice,
almost
nice.
80.
So okay, so as a tech company, who are your first five? What
Yeah.
roles did you have to fill?
Well, it's CTO right off the bat. Like we got to build the tech.
Sure.
So Mondo is the co-founder here. He's amazing. Can't wouldn't be here without him. That's for sure. So that was pretty much the first really really critical role.
Hmm.
After that was a CS operations person coming in. So Grant Carlson has been on the team for quite some time. Really, he's moved around the org from CS. He's now in product and leading some of the chargers there. And then sales. So I can still remember
Okay. Yeah.
a couple of the folks not with us today, but Matt Anderson, Raj. These were folks that were helping build our presence in California and helping move the org. So that was it. I was selling. I was supporting. And yeah,
But that's a well-rounded start, right? Because obviously you need to grow. And I think one of the things that I realized, you cut your teeth into tech right out. I mean, that's what you studied. For me, it was, I'm a mature individual entering tech going, well, I don't know a fucking thing about tech. Like I have no idea, right? I came in because of cannabis. I didn't know about tech. But, in my old world of experience and managing, it was, in factory settings and asset management, one of the things that you could do is if you got a big contract, you could staff it with overtime. You can fulfill with overtime. But what I learned really quickly in tech was you need to develop for the future before you even have clients in
yeah,
some cases, before there's even a need for it, which means your team needs to grow. So, okay, so 2018, 2019, you're starting to hit it well. You've got one of your father's clients on. Great. How does it grow from there? Is it picking up that phone? It works both ways, but you need to call, you need to sell it. Like, what was it?
yeah, exactly that. I selling, just going to conferences. Like I probably sold the first 100 clients or something like that. I still actively sell today. I'm very passionate about that. I was at the sales org at Amazon. But yeah, it was very much like kind of door to door. Like got to show up in person.
Mhm.
I was doing some LinkedIn work last couple months, and one of my really long term clients, Ruse at Tropicana in California. It's a nice shop down here in Orange County. He's like, "You made the deal by showing up." It's one of those things that you just can't get around. And I happen to be in the area, and I happen to be in San Francisco, and back and forth. And so it was showing up. It was explaining the background. We were the right people. We were cannabis people. I just happened to be a technologist, and so that really helped.
Mm.
I think our story, and people really resonated with that. So I
Yeah.
think that was it. And then after that, it was just continue the growth. We had the growth chain, and then it was how do we branch out of California, right? How do we start to get
Right,
another
right.
market?
Yeah. Yeah. Expansion. Yeah. So what did you enter the market with? What was your USP as Blaze? Was it, uptime? Was it features? Was it the team? Was it we're experiencing? What was it that because you always need to differentiate in
Yeah.
some way, and that can be just a level of service, like you just mentioned. You showed up. That's a huge difference in some cases.
I mean, our core DNA has always been about service, right? We're cannabis folks servicing cannabis operators. That is our core DNA. But I would say, like, one of the things that made us different was the product right off the bat. Like, we had a concept of delivery. You could dispatch a driver. There was like this thing that no one else had. And so
Right.
as you start to look at a business and scaling it, especially, and where we were at in California, like we have heavy population density. So delivery makes sense in a lot of markets when they have that. Plus
Mhm.
the storefronts, we were able to kind of preach this conversation, this story around like revenue expansion, right? It's not just good enough to run the store, but you got to service these bigger territories. You can do that through delivery, and so that was something that put us on the map, and frankly, we're still known for that today. Like it's still a thing. So,
Nice,
um,
nice.
yeah, I think that was really one of the core features that got us out, alongside the service, alongside we were again cannabis operators, and we weren't folks coming in to take advantage of the opportunity, like technologists diving in, right? Like
Mhm.
we really did have that DNA. We really did have that culture. Frankly, still to this day, I would say over half our company is former cannabis operators.
Right.
So
This is a massive difference. I've seen it. I've consulted with some. I've worked for some, but you can just tell, like the heart is there to be able to support. And I think that's really what it comes down to is the willingness to support your customers
yeah,
because you understand what they're going through. God forbid a crop failure, or if you flip to the dispensary side, or we've seen this. And I want to ask you about this is, the 420s and the 510s, these big tech failures at point of sale when you've got lineups of customers with all the specials. Like, man, how does that work for you? And I don't think you've necessarily experienced some of the bigger headaches that the other operators have. But I'm sure as shit you've got to have pucker going on when
yeah,
that day hits.
yeah. Look, I think that's you want to talk about a thrilling kind of adventure. It's doing mission critical software. That is thrilling. Where like second by second, this thing has to be perfect. It's not, hey, you can post a picture and then walk away, right, or do something like
Yeah.
that. It is like literally every millisecond, every action's happening through the system to power this. And so I love that accountability. While it's scary, it's actually really gratifying. And to be that core partner and that backbone of that business, I love that. It's the most gratifying thing out there. That being said, it's challenging. And some of our competitors have had some issues with that. Again, my background from AWS is infrastructure.
Mhm.
So,
5 nines, baby. It's gonna be
yeah. So,
5 9s all day long.
there's ways to handle these problems. Is it hard? Yes. Is it instrumental? Absolutely not. A lot of, I just think for even our competitors, we're moving really fast. Markets are very different. We're building per market, right? And that's per state, that's per province.
Mhm.
And that takes time and it's costly and it's hard. And meanwhile, they're trying to keep this customer base moving. So I've got a lot of empathy for other competitors out there, but the reality is like we're mission critical. Shit has to work and it has to work all the time. And
Yeah.
so we prep a lot for it. Preparation started, basically end of February. We start really ramping and looking at stuff and start doing some tests, load testing, things of that nature. And at this point, code cutoff happened. And we are pretty much starting to ramp up servers. And for this 420, it should be really fun because we're getting a nice long week of just a slow, like, pressure
Mm.
build up until probably Friday to Saturday. So we're ready for
Yeah.
it. We monitor, we have a full DevOps team that's looking at the stuff. And on 420, often you will find me quiet in my office with screens everywhere, looking at graphs like IOPS and everything else going to the
Yeah.
database and what's happening. But frankly, the last 420 was one of the most relaxing things I had. And, the team prepped. And
Wow.
when you're prepped, you got the confidence and things happen. It's, you're ready to
That's
go.
awesome. That's awesome. Well, congrats on that, man. I think
Thank you.
that's it's a testament to, who you are, really. I mean, look at your shirt. Right?
Yeah. Blaze cares. Exactly. And so,
It's there.
I just want to take a moment to talk about Blaze cares.
Yeah,
It's really
please.
fun.
Please do.
We launched Blaze Pay up in Canada in June of last year. And we have one of the things I wanted to do was, at the point of sale, we have a unique chance to make a difference and we interact with customers and customers want to help out often. So Blaze Cares was really this arm of Blaze that we wanted to get back to the community. We wanted to get back to folks And it's really simple. It's like a roundup, for the customer. Do you
Nice.
want to round up here? And so we partnered with a really great nonprofit in Toronto, SickKids Foundation. And so
Beautiful.
I'm sure I think like
Of course.
1 out of every 5 Ontarians or Torontons are familiar with that or have experience, or
Mhm.
some member has gone through
Yes.
that hospital. And so we're really proud of that. We're continuing to develop that part of the business, how we can help. And it starts with the kids. We start to work with more organizations over time. And so my goal, call it by the end of 26, over the next 18 months here, is really to develop that org. We can make a difference. Our customers want to make a difference. And so let's do it.
That's awesome. Love it. Love it. We'll make sure that we get there. Now, one of the things that you mentioned was, and this is where I'm very curious, right? So, with my tech background, we were developing for Canada or large regions geographically, right? So, Canada, Australia, Europe, we didn't touch that too much. But you're going, you're going state to state and province to province.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like,
Yeah.
I just couldn't imagine.
It's tough. So, US, again, we happen to have a particular specialty in just looking at compliance regs and being able to operationalize those, understanding kind of where, our tech needs to go to and stop, and where the operations, in person take over. And so we have we've got a lot of practice there. A lot of folks, again, come from former operators. So like we've got that lens that I think really helps us. We also have a dedicated compliance team. So no matter what day it is at Blaze, someone is working on compliance, and even if it's
Mhm.
maintenance, performance issues, whatever it may be. So that's the US. In Canada, really interesting, right? Like we got into Canada through the acquisition of Greenline back in June of 22, and I was fascinated by like how different the regulations were, and that
Yeah.
was ultimately
And
why we just
shout out to Albert Kim. I mean, that
yeah,
dude was a
right.
hustler.
Bright guy, right?
Like,
Super bright. I remember meeting Kim or Albert, and I was just like, dude, this guy's really smart.
oh yeah.
And he's driven, and he will put
Yeah.
his head down and he will go. And I just, shout out to him. He built a great company, and I'm just blessed and honored to be, moving this thing along. But yeah, it was so different. And that's ultimately why we did the transaction with Greenline. The interface was different. There was no queues. You didn't get checked in. There was no medical IDs. Like
It's
it,
so
it
different.
was so different. And so that was my pitch to the board was, hey, this kind of is really unique. We've got this pharmacy system kind of in the US. We've got this more like lightweight horizontal type of POS in Canada. And like, it's interesting to kind of run them side by side, and we can do different things with it. And so you'll see a lot of new stuff coming out, call it over the next 12 months with that kind of concept. But yeah, compliance is just so different. We have the OCS, obviously, that we interface today with in real time. And so
Mhm.
transactions in Ontario are going directly to them so they can see what's up. And obviously, all the shipments are going through them. Um, and that's really similar to the US, right? In many states, we're sending transactions in real time to the state when we're helping the inventory come in and tracking any adjustments or whatever throughout that life span of the product. So it's
Mhm.
similar in respects. It's very different in others. We're in Ohio. Our team was out there last week and this week. Ohio's it's a really interesting market for us. Not only do we have to send that over, we're checking against prescription management portals because, prescriptions are written by doctors there and they have
Jeez.
allotments and
Yeah.
directions that come with, these prescriptions. And so it's a very much deeper level of integration where
Mhm.
we are truly, interfacing with pharmacy style systems now. So
Wow.
it's really
Wow.
the spectrum, but generally speaking, track and trace, this compliance topic for retail is really track what comes in and what went out. Do we have any
Right.
leakage? And that is our job, is to stop leakage, right? And traceability.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, So an interesting subject there because, you started in delivery basically, right? You understand the logistics.
Yep.
In Canada, I mean, COVID did some, not with delivery, but the click and collect, right? But astute operators are coming around to the fact that, listen, especially in dense populations, I need to do delivery. I mentioned that, I had Mike on 1922, it didn't really dawn on me. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, obviously delivery. I mean, Uber Eats and stuff does all this stuff. Everyone's going to want stuff delivered. But then it comes down to, is your tech capable of orchestrating that for your operator as well? And is it something like in Canada, is it convincing them to do it or helping them to understand it? Like, how do you deal
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah, Canada's interesting, right? It's very market dependent, right? And delivery works, in my opinion, when you're in a highly densely populated area, right? So,
Mhm.
Ontario is great because you have all these suburbs that you can hit, right? You've got the downtown area, which is really tough to travel in, but generally speaking, like again,
Yeah,
heavily populated. This makes sense, and it doesn't make sense to go super big, but really to own, call it your 10 blocks, right? And just own it. And you have to be good. You have to be extremely good in that. I will say Canada seems a little further behind on delivery, and I
I
can
agree.
understand why. You can put a store kind of not everywhere, but you can put a store kind of all over.
Pretty much everywhere, yeah. It
Yeah,
depends on the province,
true.
right? Like in Ontario, it's fuck if you've got the money and you're not in the municipality that's against it, you're not near a
Yeah.
school, go for it. Like,
Exactly. And so there's definitely some requirements you got to facilitate, but it's generally a little bit easier to put stores. Whereas in back California, in the day it was hard. It was really hard to
mhm,
get stores, and so the delivery was that extension into that
right.
county or whatever that was next door. So look, I think we've released quite a bit of features for delivery for Canadian operators, and they're picking it up. I don't think this is a sophistication problem at all. I just think it's, hey, have we seriously addressed it since we opened, and look
Mhm,
at it again. Is the
right.
kind of conversation we're having.
So which leads me to the flip side of that, which is understanding the importance with digital presence, right? And I think for those entering the space, it's not unlike the US, right? We deal with this and all other regions, Germany will deal with this, the Swiss will deal with this, Australia will deal with this, which is you have black market illicit shops that run online, aka moms. They are successful. They make money. If you shut them down, they'll have their site up again or an alternate site
100%.
within an hour, right? So you've continued to innovate. Super excited to have you talk about Blaze sites, but I really want to just focus on the importance of digital presence, SEO, ensuring that you're competing online and that you have presence. Because it's one thing when you're brick and mortar and it's like, okay, I see, Pops Cannabis here and I see, Value Buds here and this one here. I can see them. But online, you go to search for your favorite strain or a certain product or something along those lines. Almost guaranteed it will be a mom that pops up first in those search results above the fold on Google, right? So help us understand how important that is and then speak about the innovation with Blaze sites.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're in we're in a place where it's really hard to do advertising. Our verticals just make it really difficult, like to go buy Google ads, right? To go on Meta and go deploy ads there. So when it comes to just finding the business and really look at the top of funnel kind of aspect, you have to do everything you can in all respects because you just don't have the scope and reach that any other business would have. And so when it comes to e-com and when it comes to online digital presence, I'm extremely bullish there. It's one that it's relatively cheap to do. And really, if you can stitch up your digital presence to match your in-store kind of charisma and vibe, I mean, this is where the brand identity comes out. This is where retail really starts to work on retention and really starts to get some goodwill with the consumers when they
Mhm.
have proper experiences in store and online. So I think from the top of funnel aspect, it's absolutely critical. You're doing SEO, you're doing the basics, and you're automating that, so it's not a burden for you as an operator. It is critical, right? It's all
Mhm.
about tenure when it comes to SEO. It's all about making sure you have your products indexed properly. And there's a lot of other things we can go into your brand pages, location
Yeah.
pages, all these things that do add up. And it's really just making that easy for the operator, right? It is. I've seen many dispensaries, both in the US and in Canada, hire huge agencies to run it, and I don't think you need it. I think there's definitely a time and place for that, for sure. And I'm not,
Yep.
we definitely partner with a lot of agencies, but I think at its core, this is something that needs to be happening all the time. And you need to be on top of the digital presence if you want to succeed
Yeah.
today. There's going to be
Well,
more top of funnel exposure through Uber Eats, you're mentioning, right?
yeah.
What's that, Spoon to Door up in Vancouver? I forget which
Yeah.
one it's called.
There's Skip and all these other ones
Yeah.
that exist. But yeah, well, let me just hang on that for 1 second, because I think, the early entrance into the market, is like, okay, I'm going to set up retail like a brick and mortar. Yeah. Okay. Well, as a criteria, I need a website, but how are we going to do e-com? How are we going to do online menus?
Yeah.
And it was really check the box. And then your online menus transferred to your POS. And okay, we've got something cobbled together here. Not everyone came in with retail experience, right? To operate in the brick and mortar setting. And I'm not going to mention names, but certain e-com and online menus made it very limited to be able to do anything. One, there's certain ones that owned your customer data, so you didn't even get that.
Yep.
Two, it was, oh, you want a fancy site? Nah, sorry, everyone gets the same. It's like the early days of Henry Ford, right?
Yep.
You can have any of these cars in any color you want as long as it's black.
Basically.
Right?
Basically.
And
True.
it was really difficult to differentiate, because you talk about now, if I was able to be somewhat successful, cobble some funds together, I need to rebuild my website. I need to hire an agency, which is not cheap, to rebuild this. Do you have an agency, one, that's going to, do they understand the craziness of this market, right? Prescriptions, it's not quite the same, but allotment, how much can I purchase, and all of this stuff. That was very complicated and still is, and then enter a solution. But so talk about Blaze Sites, but also how long were you thinking about this? How much development work had to go into it?
Look, I think, I talk about this a lot on LinkedIn, but we really are into this like concept of the product feedback loop, right? Customer feedback loop here at Blaze. And so a lot of our products have just been iterations on feedback that we've been getting over the course of years. And so, we purchased or we acquired Timber, which is our Blaze e-com solution today. And that was, a step ahead of some of the others that you're mentioning. You could have some theming to it. You could kind of make it your own brand. And the SEO was extremely good. It wasn't just an iframe. Like, we did have proper pages. They were indexed. They still are today, of course. But it became like, here's something to work with, right? Go figure out how you get online. And then 2 years later, 2 years go by, and then it's like, hey, how's everything going? Release a new feature. Can you get a hold of your web dev? Oh no, we laid them off. I'm sorry. Who's got access to the website? How do we update it? I don't know. Okay, I got access. Where's the domain? Where do I get access to that? And it just became this constant, like, I won't say barrier, but there's always some turnover where someone just didn't have access to stuff. And so it got lots.
I'm getting PTSD as you're talking about it, because it's like, it's so true. It's like, even just trying to support and help some of these clients, it's like, you need to change this on your website to align with this. I don't have access.
Yeah. And that, we got tired of hearing that, frankly. I'm like, we have so much great stuff. What do you think you can't get to your website? And so, we started hosting some of our customer sites for them, because it was just like, okay, you literally can't find this. I guess we got to start from scratch. Let's do it. And so Timber and Blaze had done that for maybe about a year. And at some point, we got really good at deploying these things. And then I was like, you know what? I think we can automate this. I think we can really build our own unique CRM here, or CMS here, content management site. And we did. And so we're super pumped on it. And basically the idea with that is you come over to Blaze, both in the US or Canada. You can click a button. We can have a site opened up and ready for you in about 30 minutes. Ready to go. And it's going to have some basic themes. You can go in there and tweak it. You can move stuff around. You've got full autonomy over what that site looks like. And right now we're going to start working on tying that into the, our authentication for the POS, so that you've got one place, one login to go and start to really have access to all critical components in business, right? From e-com to the site, to maybe even our mobile app, if you want to run that, down to the POS and into payments. We do payments as well. So all these, just really trying to give the owner actual operational control again, was kind of the core thesis. And as a result, we happen to do things a lot better. The homepage. Now, one of the things I harp on a lot. So if I go to an enterprise site or some, even if it's a smaller merchant, and I can't, add a product in the from the homepage, like, something's broken. Your funnel's not accurate. It's not good. We have to fix that. And so we've done a lot of work to kind of stitch the locations, like switching locations, right? All that work has been done by our team. So it's it's being indexed properly. It's got its own pages. They're easy to update and modify. They're automated when products are updated. Things, kind of bubble up in deals. As an example, you could build a promotion, push that up to E-Comm and merchandise that properly online. Like, these are things that we really want to empower our operators to do. And it doesn't have to be the operators. It should just be one GM, maybe over like 10 stores. You should be able to do that quickly.
Yeah.
And without calling a web dev and without calling, some agency. And so that's the idea.
Wild. So how much time did it take to put that together then? Because again, I love that you have that the customer feedback, which is, we used to have features, vote them up, vote them down, and the feature list would just grow and grow. But there must have been something that was like, okay, we just, you're talking about a very serious pain point, right? And a lot of these operators, again, US and Canada, they struggle with this. They're operators. They're not web developers. They don't, and then there's a lot of different agencies, not all created equal, that they can steal your money. Right? And they can also hold you hostage if you can't get credentials.
That's, and that's, exactly. And that's the thing. I think when you look at Blaze and Blaze sites, it really is going to resemble very closely to Shopify, and the fact that like we do have different themes. You can go in there, you can quickly tweak stuff, you can change the logos. Instead of 5 cards wide on the on the homepage, you want like 3 cards or 6 cards or whatever. You want your products up front and not someone else's. Like, these are things that we want you to be able to make the decision and then implement quickly. And so I'm pretty excited about it. We have had a great response to the launch last week. We've got more sites going up online, and I'm just incredibly excited because I think this will continue to thrive, and really it makes our e-com experience that would have been on someone else's site that much better and that much easier to deploy. And so that's really a pretty exciting thing to me.
Yeah. Well, and you're dealing with one vendor, right? I think that's a huge like. Again, I just, living in those shoes for just a moment, it's like, oh my God, I just couldn't imagine. You're dealing in Canada, if you're in Ontario, you've got OCS, you've got, all of your other vendors that, it's just a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. And the margins are razor thin.
They are.
If you were to explain to me everything I had to go through to operate in Cannabest, I really don't know if I would enter.
I wouldn't. Not today. Not anymore.
There's just no way.
Back in the day, but we've got a couple phrases for this thing. One, Tristan, who's our Canadian sales manager up there, calls it the vendor bender, right? That's another one. And then I take a more positive tone to it. Like, we want to be your partner, not a provider, right? That's kind of the core. I guess the core DNA behind it, but it really becomes that way. Like, look at us to really help push you guys forward, push our operators forward. If you are spreading your spend, your IT spend across 20 different vendors, are you really getting the best out of all of them? I don't know, maybe. But with us, you bring that business to us, like, we take extreme accountability over that and ownership, and we will make sure we do everything we can to make the business as successful as possible and easy to move and to manage as possible.
Yeah, nice. So I realize that you just launched a new product, but CEOs, especially in tech, they've always got their eyes on other things.
For sure.
What can you, if you can even speak to it, what are you working on, or what's exciting you about the next step for Blaze?
Yeah. Wow. I'm really excited to, we're doing a lot of work around centralization management. So as the course of time has gone on, Blaze starts to get bigger and bigger clients. We've got some operators that are 100 doors wide. Like, it's a different, with multiple logos, right, underneath that, different brand logos. This is a different type of challenge than a 10-door operator, right, with a single brand. So, we're doing a lot around how do we centralize the management of that, so that, again, a GM or like maybe a regional director can kind of facilitate this stuff, and you can do it with less folks, right, and still have call it your A, B, and C brand underneath this portfolio. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes of that. And that hierarchy looks something like a location, a company, and an organization. And so there's a different structure hierarchy than what many providers or many softwares handle today. And so we're pretty excited about that. There's a lot of stuff going on around product management and then promotion management, so that you can basically deploy a promotion across, call it 100 doors in 5 minutes. Right.
Wow.
And then so
Dude, that's a game changer.
that's something that we're working on actively. I'm super pumped on it. I think the other thing that we've done, and it's been a continued effort kind of alongside the sites project, has been our data normalization project. And then this is more of a US thing just because the data is pretty messy where we're at. In Canada, you do have provincial catalogs. It's pretty good. It's not the best thing, but it's pretty good. So we generally know that, this type of vape pen is the same vape pen across the provinces, and at least the brand we can see move across provinces if it's a multi-province brand. In the US, it's a bit trickier, right? The players, the brands are pretty localized to the state or regionalized. Yes, you've got the Kivas, an exception. Yes, you've got a few exceptions out there that are just great brands. They can traverse the markets, but it's very rare. And so for us, we know basically that again, a flower OG, whatever it is at 3.5 grams is the same product in New York or the same brand, same category as in, an operator that's carrying in California. So for us, we start to see market movement. That's interesting. So behind the scenes, we've been doing all the data work to normalize that and make sure we're ready for that kind of next phase. And that could come in the form of intelligence. That could come in the form of whatever you can think of. We can do with that kind of data. So it's
working on some LLMs in the background here, just in my spare time, right? Like
that is absolutely, we go pretty deep. And so that's been a fun, we've done some other micro launches with machine learning. One of them is the recommendation engine. We could talk about that, but we did that last quarter as well, and that was fun. So
yeah, you brought up something that I've never really thought about. Like in Canada, again, we see different data and analytics products that are available. You're right, a little bit easier to normalize depending on where your team sits. I've found that certain analytics providers that have offshore, data scientists or scrubbers, they're not familiar with the products, and it takes a little bit of firsthand knowledge to understand that, if it's sitting in this menu and they're named maybe a
slightly
little bit different. Yeah, they could be the same. But in the US, again, you're producing, processing, packing, doing it all in one state. You're not traversing those borders.
It's very rare.
So very, very interesting. Who's your anchor though? Like within the org, when it comes to, and I don't know if you're this type, we haven't spent enough time together.
Sure.
But again, the head in the cloud CEO, which is crucial and necessary for development and growth of a company, especially in tech. Who's your anchor within the org? That's like, Chris, no, like coming in and just taking stuff off your dry erase board, that kind of stuff.
Yes. We definitely have a few of those. Look, it probably is going to be, I'd say Kai and Peter. So our chief product officer, right, brings me to reality quite a bit, and our VP of engineering brings me to reality. I think Mon and I are more dreamers in that respect. And but look, we need that. You need that dynamic. You need that that conversation, the back and forth, right? And it really helps us prioritize. And so, yes, I can throw 1,000 things at the wall, but generally we'll meet and we'll come up with a priority list, and we generally agree on this stuff. And I don't make all the right calls, but generally speaking, we're pretty good at it. So. You got to have some of those people that push back and bring us down to reality, and then they say, "Hey, Chris, if you could write me a bigger check, I could do more." I'm like, okay, perfect.
Anything's possible. It depends on the size of the team. We always talk lift in tech, right? Well, what's the lift? What's the t-shirt size? But again, you have to have that, and that's that balance. I am curious though, what motivates you and what your routines are, because you're dealing with, and I haven't had a chance to ask this of too many guests, because tech is one thing, cannabis is one thing, meld them together, and now you're dealing with a whole other different story. And unless you've experienced it, you can't speak to it. So curious what motivates, but then also how do you strike that work-life balance? I mean, being in Cali, I don't know if you surf, I don't know if you do any of that type of stuff, but the outside must be calling quite a bit. And I'm just curious what that's like.
Yeah, look, I love what I do. I'm super blessed to be in the position I am. And so, I feel very fortunate. That being said, we didn't talk about this, but I did go to college for soccer. I am an athlete. I really do enjoy this stuff. I've got a really big, competitive drive that's led me into the business. It's led me outside. So I work out every day. I run a lot. So that's kind of my thing right now. I'm running quite a bit. And that really helps. And so I'm a big early person. You may see emails from me at 3 or 4 a.m. I get up early. I like to kind of have my time when it's quiet and get on a run, get a workout in, get the sauna, cold plunge going.
Nice.
Got those in my house, which is nice. And
nice.
Then I head into the day and we hit it. I do have 2 beautiful children, my daughter Callie and my son Ford, and my wife Allison. So I get to hang out with them, and right now they're 17 months and 3 years old. So it's
Oh,
really
wow.
fun to watch them, and we
Yeah.
hang out, and I'm getting pretty excited. It's almost time for the pool action here. It's getting warm enough where we can get back in. So
Wait. What do you mean getting warm enough? Like,
you know,
what temperature does it
I
need to
like my
be for
pool at
a Californian to want to go in a pool?
look, I got the cold plunge. That's at 40 degrees. I like that. I like my pool
Yeah.
like 75, 78 degrees. So it's not there yet. We're really close. It's probably time soon. But yeah, we just like to hang out in the backyard and go on hikes and stuff. So
Oh, that's
pretty normal
awesome,
in that
man.
respect.
That's awesome. Listen, what advice do you have for anyone entering this space? Period. I generally get very focused with it, but I mean, again, you've worked with the operators, you've been an operator, you're in tech as well. Like, what type of wisdom could you impart to our audience?
Man, I think it's all going to come down to your drive and your willingness to endure, right? At the end of the day, in this space, there's going to be it's still a washing machine in many respects. We're going to be in here for another five years, in my opinion. Things are shaking out, it's happening. And so you need to have an inordinate amount of self-belief in whatever you're doing. And you have to be just dead focused on knowing that is the thing. And so it's hard because, this could apply to cultivators, could apply to, doesn't have to be tech specific, but I will say you have to be just fully bought in on this journey and understand that everyone is watching everything you do, which is good. You have to look at that as an opportunity, and not everything is going to be, rainbows and hearts. It's going to be pretty tough. Like, this market's hard. And, frankly, the first 5 years of Blaze, I was working 80 hours and I'm still working quite a bit now, but like, it was just support calls, selling, right? Building.
I can hear all the notifications going, email, Slack, all these things going, and it's okay. Don't worry about it. But I'm like, yeah, this is going crazy.
But yeah, so it's just, you got to be able to dive in, and you got to have a ton of belief. I'd say without that, the rest of it's going to be extremely difficult. But it still can be done. I'm excited. We're seeing some new brands. We're seeing some new markets open up. I've really been refreshed by New York and refreshed by Ohio and some new markets to get into, because as new markets open up, the operators that go in are more sophisticated, right? Generally speaking, at this point. So
New York's on fire. Let's touch on that real quick before we wrap. Like, what's the store count at now? I swear I just saw an update. It was at like 350 with expectations to be 500 like within the next couple of months. Is that right?
I think that's accurate. So New York is roughly, I think, 300, 350. I don't know exactly around that range, but they said, they want to end the year around like 800 or so.
How did they do that so fast? Like, it seems like it was just yesterday that they announced, yep, we're going rec.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's this many stores.
Yeah, it's crazy, and the GMV is huge. This is a big market. It's really fun because we've got Green Line obviously up in all along New York, up at the border there, and we'll see what happens. But it's really cool to see that market open up. It is growing fast. It's wild that there's about 400 brands already in New York, and that's been the fascinating thing to me. The door count I expected given the population, but the brand, I'm like, I didn't realize there'd be so many brands that stood up that fast. So we'll see what happens over the course of time. But interesting market, is moving quickly. Just pretty excited about it. Wanting to be dominate there.
Well, listen, man, continued success. Love your energy. I love that you get up early and get at it. That's super important. And also, spending time with the family and understanding that. Like, I think it's easy as entrepreneurs to forget why we do what we do. Yeah. Right. And you clearly understand. So thank you for joining Legacies, my friend. I'm looking forward to being in Cali at some point in time. We'll chop it up in person, but thanks for joining Legacies.
Yeah, Tom, thank you. Great conversation today. And let's do it next time. It'll be fun.
For sure.